Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to continue talking about the Constitutional Convention and how the Constitution came to be as we know it today. We ended last video by saying that we were going to talk about these proposals that were put forward for ideas of what should be in the Constitution. So, the first proposal is called the Virginia Plan. The Virginia Plan was proposed by James Madison. Most of the delegates preferred an ambitious scheme proposed by Madison called the Virginia Plan. In addition to securing the power to tax and to regulate commerce, Madison proposed a government that divided power among three branches: the legislative, the executive, and the judicial. The plan proposed a bicameral legislature with a House of Representatives and a Senate. In both houses, the states with larger populations would have more members. Madison's plan also included a daring feature. The National Congress would have the power to veto any state law, just as Parliament had done with colonial laws. Okay, so the Virginia Plan. It is saying that the bigger the state is, the more people that's in it, the more authority that state should have. Kind of makes sense, you know. If you represent more people, you're a bigger state, you should have more authority in the government. It kind of makes sense. The Virginia Plan also called for a strong president. The president would enjoy a relatively long term in office of 7 years, but could not be elected a second time. The president would command the armed forces and manage foreign relations. He would appoint all executive and judicial officers, subject only to approval by the Senate. A critic of the plan, Patrick Henry, worried that such a powerful president could easily become a king. And remember, a lot of these people had fought in the Revolutionary War. They fought a war. They watched their friends and family bleed and die to fight a war to get out from under a king. So Patrick Henry here is going to be very reluctant to sign on to a plan that's going to have such a strong president that could, in his own words, easily become a king. So let's talk about the New Jersey Plan. Some delegates advocated only modest changes to the Articles of Confederation. Favored by the small states, their proposal, introduced by William Paterson of New Jersey, became known as the New Jersey Plan. This plan gave Congress the powers to regulate commerce and to tax, but it kept the three chief principles of the Articles of Confederation. First, it retained a unicameral legislature representing the states as equals, no matter how large or small. Second, it preserved an executive committee rather than adopting a singular president. Third, the states remained sovereign except for those few powers specifically granted to the national government. Under the New Jersey Plan, the United States would remain a loose confederation. So we have these two competing plans. The point where they are the most different is state power. Virginia Plan is going to favor the big states because the bigger the state is, the more authority it has. Virginia was the largest state in the Union. The New Jersey Plan is going to be favored by the smaller states because this plan says that all states should have equal representation in the government. So a smaller state is going to like that because that puts small states like New Jersey and Rhode Island on the same footing as big states like Virginia and Pennsylvania. Need for compromise. Something had to be done in order to prevent the convention from ending in a stalemate. The delegates were far from a unanimous decision concerning the structure of the new government, and without the compromise laid out below, they may never have reached an agreement. So they were in a deadlock. The people that liked the Virginia Plan said, no, Virginia Plan, that's the only thing that we can go with. And the people on the side of the New Jersey Plan said, we're going with the New Jersey Plan. This is the only way forward. And this led to a deadlock, a stalemate. You know, neither side was willing to back down. They had to have it their way. They were not going to accept anything other than the plan that their group supported. Led by Roger Sherman of Connecticut, the delegates reached a compromise between the Virginia and New Jersey plans, known as the Connecticut Compromise or the Great Compromise. John Dickinson of Delaware played a key role in crafting this compromise, which made a concession to the small states. The Senate would equally represent every state, regardless of size, by allowing 2 senators per state. In keeping with the Virginia plan, the House of Representatives would represent population, granting more power to the larger states. Does that setup sound familiar to you? It should be, because this is the final agreement that they settled on and is the basis of our Constitution today. The reason our legislative branch is set up as the way it is due to this great compromise, under the leadership of Roger Sherman. William Paterson, head of the delegation from New Jersey, proposed a plan for representation that equalized governmental power among large and small states. And this plan, the New Jersey plan, is what is the basis of our Senate today. Because in the Senate today, it is made up of 100 members, 2 from each state. So, that is where you see the New Jersey plan today. Compromising on federalism. In another concession, Madison abandoned his cherished national veto over state laws. Instead, the compromise simply forbade the states from enacting the sort of laws that offended many during the 1780s. For instance, the states could no longer issue their own money or provide debtor relief at creditors' expense. By compromising between the Virginia plan and the New Jersey plan, the delegates supported a system known as federalism, which divided government power between the federal government and state governments. Once again, this is the plan, this is the idea that our Constitution today is based on. We have state governments, we have the federal government. That system, where they both share power, is called federalism. Compromising on slavery. During the debates over the Constitution, the delegates discovered that their greatest division pitted the Southern against the Northern delegates. The Southerners feared future domination by the Northern states, which had more free people. They worried that Northern domination would threaten the slave system, which they viewed as essential to the Southern economy and society. The delegates from South Carolina and Georgia threatened to walk out unless the Constitution protected the institution of slavery. So, all the way back in 1787 at this Constitutional Convention, we are seeing the beginnings of that North and South tension that, as we know now, is going to lead to the Civil War. So we're already all the way back in 1787. We are already starting to see these two sides grind on each other. And what's causing this grind? Slavery. The subject tore at Madison. On the one hand, he wanted a powerful nation, and he despised slavery as the most oppressive dominion ever exercised by man over man. On the other hand, he owned slaves himself. He also knew that Southern voters would reject a constitution that threatened slavery. So he assured his constituents in Virginia that the Constitution offered slavery better security than any that now exists. So, while he is aware that slavery is kind of at odds of the values of this nation that they're trying to establish here, one that values democracy and personal freedom and equality among all before the law, but at the same time they have this institution of slavery in place, he knows that it's wrong. But he's a slave owner himself, and he knows that the southern states are not going to sign on with any document that says that that slavery is illegal. And so he has to make a decision here. He wants this nation to work, but he doesn't like the idea of slavery being in it. But he also knows that if he goes against it, half the people are going to turn away, it's going to make the nation weak, and if the nation is weak, Britain could just swoop right back in and take it back over. And they're going to try. So this leads to the 3/5 Compromise. That security took three forms. First, the Constitution forbade Congress from blocking the importation of slaves for 20 years. Georgia and South Carolina would import another 100,000 slaves by 1808. Second, a compromise known as the 3/5 Compromise counted each slave as 3/5 of a person to be added to a state's free population in allocating representatives to the House of Representatives and Electoral College votes. The 3/5 clause gave the southern states more seats in Congress and more power in presidential elections than they would have enjoyed had only free people been counted, as the northern delegates preferred. So this 3/5 Compromise, and I have this graphic down below to kind of give you a visual representation. For every 5 slaves, for every 5 enslaved persons, that's going to equal 3 free people. The southern states wanted to count their slaves as part of their population. The bigger population they have, the more representatives they're going to have in the House of Representatives. Makes sense. Well, the northern states were saying, well, no, because the slaves can't participate in the government. They can't vote, they can't hold office. So how can you count them as your population if you're not going to give them rights? So this is where this 3/5 Compromise came into play. The South wanted to count them. The North said, well, you can't count them because you're not giving them rights. So they came up with this compromise where every 5 slaves would count 3 people towards their population. Third, the Constitution committed all states to return fugitive slaves to their owners. In other words, running away to a free state did not free a slave. Northerners were required to help enforce the slave system as the price of union. So this is going to be a point of tension going forward. Like I said, clear back in 1787, we are already starting to see this grind against the two factions, the two groups, and right at the center of it, slavery. Okay, so here's another graphic about the 3/5 Compromise. The basics of apportionment. So this is to calculate what your state's population is. You would take your free people and your enslaved, and then you would add your enslaved persons. But you were going to take this number and multiply it by 3/5 so that you're going to have a much lower number. And that's going to enter your total, it's going to give you your total population. So, calculating the state's representatives. The free population. In the yellow, we're going to have Virginia, and in the orange, we're going to have New York. Free population of Virginia is 445,983 people, whereas the free population of New York is 318,796. Now, if we look at the slave population, Virginia had 292,620 slaves, whereas New York only had 21,324. So, when you add their slaves with the 3/5 Compromise, you get a grand total population of Virginia of 630,559.2, and New York is going to have 331,590.4. So, as you can see, it's kind of mind-boggling to think of in a population count you can end up with 0.2 or 0.4 people. So that's how they calculated their representation in the government. Compromising on a Bill of Rights. Most state constitutions had adopted bills of rights to protect civil liberties from the power of government, but the federal delegates declined to include a Bill of Rights in their constitution. A South Carolina delegate, Charles C. Pinckney, explained, such bills generally begin with declaring that all men are by nature born free. Such a declaration would come with a very bad grace when a large part of our property consists in men who are actually born slaves. Unlike the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution did not proclaim that all men were born free and equal in their rights. So, this guy here from South Carolina, a slave state, is already kind of pointing out the dual nature at play here, sort of the hypocrisy in the Constitution, that it's giving people rights, but not everybody. On September 17th, the Constitutional Convention concluded with 42 delegates still present. Many, including Madison, disliked the compromises, but Franklin appealed to all to unite in support of the federal experiment. Hamilton reluctantly accepted the Constitution as the only alternative to anarchy and convulsion. In the end, 39 delegates signed the document, while 3 refused to sign out of protest. George Mason and Edmund Randolph of Virginia and Elbridge Gerry of Massachusetts considered the document to be flawed. Next came the greater challenge of winning approval from the states. Okay guys, that's going to be it for this video. If you have any questions, you know how to get a hold of me. I hope everybody's having a great day, and I will see you again real soon. Bye.